Good morning and welcome back to Planner Craft. I'm Natalie and today we're going to be doing a Condolence focus card. So I've gathered together some stamps of poppies, lilies, typical floral stamps that we would go to for these types of card. And I've started to plan a few ideas for where we're going to be taking this. So first of all, morning Deb, and if anybody else is watching, if you can let me know, because for whatever reason Streamlabs today is saying that I have no viewers when I'm getting hellos, so it's having a good day. Morning Corrine. So I'm just waiting for a few more hellos so I know that we've got everyone. And if I bring in my sketchbook, so I've done a few sketches, so let's see if I can make that a bit closer for you. So we have a typical A5, A6 style card, and you can see that we've got our lilies up the side, a bit of background stamping, nice and simple. We've got a sentiment up the top and a decorative edge that we can cut with a trimmer or punches, or you can go and use your scanning cup for that if you wish. Then moving down, I've then put that into a square card so that we actually crop in a bit more, so we just focus on the actual flowers themselves. So that can be a good design for if you don't have the right words. So whether you want to then put that onto a square card, or if you want to go onto a A5, A6, you can do that too. And the outer border around the outside doesn't have to be a separate layer. You can draw it or emboss it instead, which can sometimes give you a much nicer finish. And finally we have one where we go all singing, all dancing, with lilies, poppies and the edge stamps. So let's get started. Now, any image where you've got multiple stamped images, you are going to need to do some kind of masking. So I've pulled out some masking tissue, and because we definitely want our lily stamp to pop to the foremost, then I'm going to mask that one. But also, if you are going to use any edging stamps that you want to bring to the front, you're going to want to mask those. Now, if you have a more solid image, so for example, if you have one of the We Three Kings sets from Leslie's last show, you'll find that those have got like solid crown stamps. With those you don't have to worry about masking so much, but you are going to want to use embossing powder so that you kind of obliterate what's underneath. Easy for me not to say this morning. So, morning Mum, with masking tissue is actually on a sort of acetate backing. So you want to stamp on the matte tissue side. So if you look just here, you see there's like a point where your acetate extends beyond your tissue. So even if you can't see which side it is, you can feel it. Okay, so let's take my lily stamp first. And you're going to want to have a stamp platform of some description. I'm going to use my little one for today, just because I don't want to work with huge pieces of card, so I know I can get away with a slightly smaller platform. I'm going to bring in one of my sticky sheets, just going to hold that in place with a couple of magnets. Okay. Now if you want to, you can actually cut into this sheet so that you're not having to stamp the whole sheet at once. So that can be good if you just want to do like individual masks rather than doing full sets. So, bear with me today, I'm a little under the weather, just a little. Let's chop this in half, very roughly. And if it helps, you can always just pop your stamp in just to check that you've got enough width. So if I move up just a little bit, there we go. Move my mouse out of the way, don't need it for now. There we go. Okay, that one done, and we can turn it round and trim it again if you want, or you can just use it that size. So what I want, I'm just going to rotate it round, and we can use our stamp to help us size that if need be. Like so. Now when you're stamping onto this, you can use any of your standard stamping inks. It doesn't have to be StazOn or anything. So line that up into there. Stamp over the top. And then we can lift that up and we're ready to go. So that you can see what I'm doing, I'm going to use some black squid ink. So squid ink is a bit of a softer black, but it does dry nice and quick. And you just want to get a good enough image that you can see the outside edge. And if it does slightly shift, don't worry too much, we can fix it. It's mainly there to give you a guide for where you're cutting. So in case I haven't said morning already, morning Linda. I'm just going to use a little water just to clean off that ink. And so long as you do it fairly quick, you'll find that it comes off nice and easily. Now if you're doing a full sheet, what you can do of course is use your scan and cut to cut this out if you want to, using your half cut. But what I would say is, because it is tissue, what you do want to do is either use a vinyl blade, or if you have one, you can use the blue standard blade as well from the CM, and then you'll find that you'll get a better cut. So let's grab the scissors, and I'm just going to cut around this, going inside our stamp line. So the reason we go inside is so that we don't get the halo when we come to stamp our next stamp over the top. And I'm just going to rotate my work rather than my scissors. Okay, so it's going to go like that. And we want to go back inside this line again. Go up past the stem, and we'll rotate that one round to go down. And you'll be pleased to know that you don't have to be super duper accurate with your masking. the thinner your masking material, the less you need to go inside, so that's something to bear in mind. So if you're working with something like the masking sheets that I showed you before, in previous videos, then you're going to go slightly more inside, whereas this is quite thin, so you don't need to go too much inside. If you work with a stamp that has like a section in the middle that you need to cut out, what I would say is just consider what you're going to be stamping over the top, because it might be that you don't need to go to the trouble of cutting that all out really intricately. There we go. And if you do go wrong with your mask, don't worry, you can probably use most of it and still get away with it. So don't think, oh, I cut off that tiny little bit, that tip of a flower, or you know, a stem or something, because most of the time you'll be able to blend away using either your watercolours or even just using the ink from the actual stamped image itself if you're using something like distress. What you do want to make sure that you do is use some nice sharp scissors though. So mine is struggling a little bit because I'm cutting through the plastic as well. So then when we come to put it back on later, it's just a case of lining it back up to that plastic so that we can reuse our mask. And so long as you don't use something like watercolour over the top of your mask, you should be absolutely fine to do that. Just make sure when you place your mask over your stamped image that it is totally dry. Okay, so if we look in here, you can see that we've got all these little bits of detail where the stems kind of have a gap. But to be honest, I'm going to actually just leave that as a solid. And what you could do if you wanted to is actually cut this mask into sections, so you can mask out individual bits when you need to. But for what I'm doing today, I thought it'd be quickest to kind of show its block. So, nearly there. There we go, and hopefully there we go, we have our mask. So let's turn that one round and you can keep it nice and simple. So today I'm going to be working on to some card, like so. Now if you want to work on to the piece just as an A5, that's fine. So your stamped image, let's just zoom back out, there's the titch, there we go, is then going to fill up about 2/3 of your space. So if I look back at my sketch, you can see that that's this one here. Okay. If you want to do that, that is fine. I'm also going to look at cropping into it a bit, so let's think. Which way should I go? Let's start off with an A5 and then I'll trim down. So I'm just going to take my magnets out. I'm going to take my sticky sheet out. And basically, because we're working with rubber stamps, so these are cling mounted, we don't need the foam that's in the bottom. But let's say you've only got a small stamp platform and you think, oh, I can't do A5 card. You can, you just have to be a bit more careful. So I'm just going to put the magnet there. And because I want the lily to kind of come to the foreground, I'm going to stamp that first. Now if you want to use an edge stamp along the bottom, which is something I'll show you in a bit, then you're going to want to stamp that first. So basically you always stamp from foreground to background when you're masking. So the thing at the front, then the next layer, then mask that, then stamp your layer behind that. Okay, then lift that up. And well, we could use the squid ink, I did pull out a sort of sandy coloured ink pad that we could use, but I've also pulled out ice spruce, so we've got grey with like a hint of green in it, and it's really good for when we've got something that we've got foliage in. So I'm going to use just the regular distress ink rather than the oxide to start with. And let's see how that stamps. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll use the oxide to get a perfect impression, but occasionally we can just get away with using the ink. Okay. So it's not too bad, but we can see that we've missed a few bits just in the middle. So I'm going to move the stamp platform, I'm going to move the camera. You can see, hopefully, so it's gone a little bit hit and miss just here. Now if there were much bigger gaps, what I would say is then you would switch the oxide, but because they're quite small gaps, I'm just going to re-ink it with the same ink. Okay, flip it over and press it down. Now this works with on A5 because we're working down to this bottom corner. So if you want to place your stamp anywhere other than that, but you want to still keep it A5, just kind of rotate your work. And there we go. So you want to give that a few moments just to make sure that ink is dry before you put your masking over the top, or we can just waft it with a heat gun. You could also, if you wanted to, do your painting of your lily first, but I'm going to try and do that kind of last. Okay, and very carefully pick this up. And I'm going to place this down so that we can see the outline around our masking. Just take your time. So we've taken the extra time here to get it where you need to, because then it's going to make your time when you come to do your stamping and blending a little bit easier. There if it goes slightly off like it has there, just lift it up and twist it back where it needs to go. Can be a little bit fiddly, but that's okay. Just take your time, enjoy the process. If you try and rush it, it will never go right. So, there we go. And just make sure the little tips of your leaves and your flowers are pressed down well, because that tends to be where they'll catch the most. Okay, so you should have something that looks like that. No, we haven't reached 5,000 yet, Carol. Do share out the group, because when we do, we are going to do a free workshop. So I have a few ideas about what we're going to do for that as well. So definitely need to push out the group. So once we've done our masking and we've got that in place, we can then stamp over with any other images that we want to. So I was thinking, as you do, that I was going to pop a corner stamped image into the background. But before you go that far, just stop and think, am I going to want to put other images between that background and the flower? What masking are you using? I'm using the chocolate rock masking tissue, which is this one. I'll hold it away from the text. You know, I put in loads of light today thinking that it's going to look a bit dark. It still looks dark, even with all the lights on. So let's see if I can just get it to brighten up a bit. It's because it's on black as well. So let's think. I'm going to go to a little bit of foliage, I think. So let's pull out this set. And I've got these little frondy-like stamps, and they're really good for just filling in kind of a bouquet type image, but they're also fine enough that it doesn't matter if we mask them or not. So just bear in mind your design, where you want to go. And also, if you need to, don't be afraid to move a magnet or two. I'm going to pop that one up there. Don't go too close to this top edge, because otherwise you risk damaging your card. And let's go there for starters. So we can pick those up. And I can go with some more ice spruce, or you could switch to a different ink pad. These are more kind of solid stamps. So if you wanted to go like to a straw colour, a little bit more. I'm being a bit too gentle. Okay. So let's get a little bit more ink on there. Now, if you're getting something like this where you've got lots of splodges that are missing, as I said before, we can switch to the oxide and we can go over the top of that instead. So I'm using ice spruce, in case you missed Carol, because it's got like that kind of greeny tinge to it, so we can kind of pull that through into our foliage. Or if you want to use a soft warm grey, you could do that. but the only thing I wouldn't do is go black. Okay, so that's a little bit better. And then we want to think about our corner piece, or if we want to put any little flowers up the top. So I'm just going to wipe off the stamp. So I'm planning on doing a little bit of ink blending as well. And a little bit of watercolour. Okay. So we have some little flower heads in this set. And we can actually pull those through into our design if we want to. Just remember that they are going to stamp the opposite way to what you're thinking. So if you're thinking that would look really nice like that, what you're going to need to do is to just reverse it using a gel plate. Or we can just work with it and go, okay, let's pop just there, maybe. Or we've got this longer one that is going to fit kind of there-ish. Let's try going for that one. So just be aware of where your outlines are. Let's go there. Now if need be, we can always join the dots, so to speak, with a nice coloured fine liner. Now I'm going to start off by going back to the ink, just because our main image is done with the ink as well. So let's see if we can kind of pull that out. Let's see how that looks. Not too bad, it's a little bit soft, but that's okay, because it's going to be further to the background anyway. Now see how we've got the stem and it kind of stops here. Don't worry, because we can actually pull our colour through and then make sure that we actually join that stem down here as well. And if we go back to our little stamp, just trying to think if it's going to go that way. We can probably point that up a little bit, so it goes like that, and it can just be nice and subtle in that background. So again, I'm going to go to the ink. Okay. So that's one kind of option. Now, I'm going to grab my decorative corner. Now, this might be one way you decide that actually my stamp platform is not going to be big enough, because it's quite big stamp. So if I work like that, what I'm going to do is just bring in a magnetic platform of some kind, or you can masking tape your piece to the desk. There we go. We can do a little bit of a cheat, just a little bit. So just to prove that you don't have to have all the gadgets, we can have a smaller stamp platform and still work big. Let's move those out of the way for a second. I'm going to bring my stamp platform and I'm going to line it up onto my grid of my magnetic mat. when it's happy, I'm just going to move my magnets so that it's going to hold that in place. It's not going to be perfect, but as long as you're careful. Now, then I can move my card. And I'm just going to kind of put my magnets very carefully. So I've just got them on the edge there. And if need be, we can pop our little ones there too, just to hold that in place. I'm going to take my stamp and line it up. Now, because it's a decorative corner, I'm just going to move it so it's slightly off my image. So let me see if I can just get that to move up a bit. So about there. Keyboard getting in the way a little bit. There we go. So move camera down. There we go. I'm going to very carefully flip over my platform. Now just put a hand just on this side, just because when we do start to pick up that stamp, it is going to lift up slightly. And we can use our stamp platform that way. Now, just so that I can get a good pressure on this corner, I'm just going to take that one off. And let's ink up. So, I'm going to go to the oxide so that we're kind of getting as much ink coverage as we can on this solid stamp. And very carefully flip this over, place it down, hold it with a hand at this point, and then we can give it a good press, like so. Okay, so then we have our corner. So at the moment it's going to look really busy, but what you've got to remember is that it's got to lift off. Yes, Louise, my knees are in exactly the same situation. I think we've got to that point in life where, you know, our nicknames are Ratchet and Clank, and I'm definitely Ratchet. My niece could do sound effects for, like, scary movies. So at the moment, to be honest, I have more jip in my elbow. It's not good. So let's move that away from there. Pop that back onto a mount. There we go. So far so good. Now, if you want to do any kind of ink blending, leave your masking on. So what I'm going to do is bring in the same ice spruce. And let's go for that's a bit too blue, so let's go for that one. And I'm just going to blot it onto the actual stamp platform. And then we can go nice and lightly over our masking. So if there's any bits that are misbehaving and lifting up, just make sure that you work from the inside out. and it's also going to pick up some of the ink from around the outside because the oxide is going to be slower to dry, so we can go over the top of that too, and it's going to blend some of that out. Just do that before it dries too much so that it's all even. So a bit more over here, up into this section here. And it's going to look really subtle. What you don't want to do, especially where you want to keep your colours paler and softer, is go too much thinking, oh, it's naked. So, and even where we've stamped our flowers, I'm still going to go over that edge too, so that we're knocking those back. So our lilies are coming to the forefront. Now if you haven't got a lily stamp, it's actually one of the easiest flowers to draw. So I did a video going back to 2020 I think, where I did how to draw a lily so that you could draw along. So if you want to go back to that video and draw it and then trace that onto your masking film, you can do that. Just need a little bit more at this top. So by doing this ink blending around the outside, what we're actually doing is making our lilies be able to look like they are white, because we're giving that background to help it pop. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Louise, that you've got a nasty chest infection. So we're getting there. So I did actually cut some edge stamps out with a view to getting another card done after this one, but just looking at the time, might not get there. So now when we peel away our masking, if I peel away this top section, you can see that you've kind of got your white lily against a greeny grey background. It's actually much more visible in real life as such. But I'm just going to carefully peel that away. And then when you're ready, you can pop that back onto your plastic backing. There we go. And we can use that another day. So let's just line that up on there. There we go. And I might just have to very carefully place that back on there for now, and then I'll sort that out after. So now that we have our main image, we can see that we've got little bits where we've got issues, so like in the stems here. So this is where we can start to actually create a little bit more of a defined edge. So even though we've got this nice soft blending, we can go back over it with watercolour and actually emphasise that a bit more. So let's pull out a paintbrush. I'm going to put a little bit of ice spruce to start with, just so that we can match that colour. And I'm using the ink rather than the oxide. So particularly if you're going to be using any kind of nice watercolour brushes, you don't want to be using the oxide. Is it possible to put the comments into different colours? That is a jolly good question. Let me just see, because it does annoy me that it kind of blends in. Chat box. Let me see. simple. So, no, it's going to be annoying. Well, let's see if I try it in there. There we go. Let's pop that. There we go. That's what I need. Right, so if somebody wants to comment and we can test out the theory that that's worked, I'm just going to dip into my water. Now, one thing to bear in mind is that I'm working onto just normal card. I'm not working onto watercolour, so I don't want to make it too wet. And I'm just going to go in these areas here. And you can see there's a very slight tonal difference. That's okay. So remember how I was saying about if you wanted to cut it into sections you could. So for instance, if you wanted to push these stems into the background when we did that corner stamping, then what you could have done is cut those off. And I'm just going to pop a bit more colour under here as well. And there we go. So because that stem is coming out over the top, I'm going to go around it. And there's a little bit just in there too. So I need a little bit more colour. And we can build up layers. Like so. I'm just going to go around the very edge of the leaf, around our flower here. So we start to get a bit of depth going. And you can use things like make a mark, sort of splodge stamps and things in the background. Whether you want to replace your mask to do that, it's up to you. Okay, so I'm just going to go a little bit around this edge too. So we've done kind of our background work. Now it's time to make that image come forward. So in terms of our white flowers, we're going to use that same ink colour so that we're kind of creating like a monotone effect. So I'm just going to go in with just a little bit of water around this kind of centre little stamen, because that's going to have a colour to it. Now with something like this where you're working with lots of pale shades, it really is up to you how accurate you are when it comes to things like colours of stamens or even the colours of the poppies. So if you want to keep your poppies white, that's okay. If you want to go and put them into a red because you want to be accurate, that's fine too. Or you could go to a nice softer sort of yellow poppy. So I'm trying to make sure I don't get too much water in my brush. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of a squeeze against my platform. And let's go down to this one next. So there we go. Around a little bit of a stamen. So your strongest colour is going to be right on this edge here. And also in this little gap here. And then underneath the curl of the petal like that. And a bit down the bottom. And just remember to just do a little bit on that bottom edge there, so that we feel like it's going round. So yes, Californian poppies are yellow. There's also some very pretty alpine poppies that you can reference. So if you want to do other colours, like a nice blue, you can go to your alpines and get photo references to help you there as well. So as we've now done the white flowers as such, let's just do a little bit of blending just on this top edge here, just before we go too far, and I'm going to do the same just on this top edge, because that would be kind of curling over the top, so we can kind of use our watercolour just to help that out, and a little bit just on the tip there, so, like so. So far so good. Now I want to go to a slightly stronger version of that colour to go into the stems. Now, even though I'm using ice spruce for this stage, there is nothing stopping you then going over the top of that with another green. But by putting this layer of ice spruce first, we're going to help our colours kind of sit into that background, even if we then go and add just a touch of yellow to make a nice soft green. And I'm going to do the same for my poppies, so just follow that stem round, and we can then just take that down. Now follow through so that you actually have another stem there. So even though you don't have a stem that is stamped, you can still follow it through and just check that image. Okay, so a little bit more colour. There we go. So now we can go to our watercolours, and we can start to bring in some other tones. Now, whatever you want to kind of do for your colours, we're going to want to keep it nice and soft. So the temptation is to go, right, okay, I'm just going to blast it with a load of water. But obviously if you do that on normal card, all you're going to do is just have something that just wrinkles. So instead you just have to be a little bit clever about the amount of pigment that you're picking up. So you're going to be wanting to work with really light touch when you go into your paints, but also when you go into your palette, so that you're just picking up the barest minimum of colour. It does mean that you are going to be constantly kind of going back and picking up lots of little bits of colour rather than just loading the brush and off you go. Yeah, it does look really pretty as it is. So if at this point you wanted to stop, you could just do like the toning through the leaves if you wanted to, so that it was all very monotone, very flat. But you can also go photorealistic with it. It's really up to you. Now, what I wouldn't do is go, right, okay, let's go full on saturated colour over the top, because it's going to go and it's going to look no. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a slightly more saturated version of the colour that I've already put down. So if we look in the palette here, I've got this kind of really pale green, and that will do. And very lightly just go over the top. And just adding that little bit of colour is just going to help those stems kind of come forward from that background without being overpowering. So I'm going to do the same with these little bits of leaf down the bottom here, and like so. It's a nice, soft, subtle colour, like so. So what stamp is it? The lily is from, they're all chocolate rock stamps, and let me get the right one, because I would hate to give you the wrong description. Flora and fauna. So I'm going to pick up some more of that same green. And I'm going to do my leaves. So I'm going to work around the outside of this leaf here, because that's where this leaf is going to be darkest, and likewise around the outside of the white flower there, and then we can just blend. So as we work across our leaf, it's going to get paler and paler. And you can see just by keeping your colours nice and soft, it's not going to make it too zingy and showy and dunty. So I'm just going to pick up a little bit of almost grey and just touch right in this edge here. So we do get the sense that it's a shadow. So with this leaf here, I'm going to kind of work down from this section here, furthest away from the light, and then we can do the same process again. So, and it's really soft colouring, so you can barely see it really. Now for our little stamens, they are usually kind of yellow ochre. The subtitle's going completely mental. I dread to think, I have to say, I do dread to think what they come out with sometimes. So for the yellow ochre, we can go straight to our palette, okay? But if we mix it somewhere, so let's go, just for want of space, I'm just going into this well here. We can just make sure that it's not going to be too strong. We can just touch that in. So again, it is soft, it is subtle, it's not going to be full on in your face colouring. And for our poppies, we can go and kind of differentiate the tones a little. So let's say our lilies are like white as white can be, almost with like a tinge of green. Then our poppies might be a nice soft cream. You don't have the subtitles on Facebook. That's weird, because when I was looking the other day, they were popping up, and I was like, okay, I didn't say that. So when we want to go to a cream, we can use our yellow ochre that we were just using, but we're going to make it really quite pale. So I'm just going to touch right in those kind of shaded areas. And it's just going to help those petals kind of push forward in the centre. And then where it joins that flower, I'm just going to make sure that I go darker, so it's going to kind of pop that lily forward, if that makes sense. So a little bit more on my brush. I'm just going to go that right in that seam there, and just here, by keeping it nice and soft and light. No, Carol, if you've seen what it said, I said the other day, we don't miss the subtitles. It was not appropriate. And I definitely didn't say what it said I said. I would not dream of being so rude on stream. So I'm going to go darker into the centre of my flower. So a little bit more of that yellow ochre. and we're just going to drop it in right in that centre section there. And maybe a little bit up if you've got something that is more like a wrinkle in the flower, or where there's a definitive break from new petal, we can just pop that in there. And finally, I'm just going to do a light wash for this front petal, and just strengthen any colours that you think you need to make the image make sense. So that one's done. So a little bit of a nice pale wash for this one as well. Just going to go straight over those little stamens, so I don't try and go around. I should be there all day. I'm just going to draw a little bit of the colour just around like that, and then around the outside of every petal. And around the base of our flower. So I just need a little bit more. And there we go. I'm sure they don't mind travelling to Yorkshire. Okay, so there is our image. Now in terms of turning that into the card, in our original sketch we did a decorative edge. Let me pull that over there, there we go. We did a decorative edge where we could put contrasting card underneath and then mount that onto our card blank. Or we could crop into it for a panel on a card where we have no sentiment for when there are no words. So if you don't have an appropriate sentiment in your collection, you're like, what do? Just crop in and focus on the image. Let the image, speak for you. And finally, we did another one where we had the plan to put the edge in as well. And as I said, if you wanted to, you could bring in some more solid stamps. So like the crown from the Wise Men stamps, if you want to do a card to send to the palace, then there you go. There's an idea for you. And you can just use embossing powder over the top, so that way you don't have to worry about having already positioned it if you don't want to. And likewise, if you have started with the crown stamp, for instance, or something that is more solid, you could go the other way and you could actually emboss it first, and then you don't need to worry about masking. Thank you, Carol. Yeah, it is very subtle, and it's just good sometimes to just go back to basics. So we've done masking. We've done fuzzy cutting because of cutting the mask. We've done watercolouring, and then I have actually set to one side my coloured pencils as well, so if you want to bring those in instead, if you feel like you can have a bit more control, then you can use coloured pencils too. So it really is up to you which way you want to go. Now if you want to pop something up onto the group with something you've done based on today's stream, that is absolutely fine. You can create an album in your own name too, and that means then that I can see what work you're doing for a month, and who knows, there might be a little bit of a cheeky prize for projects. There you go. So hopefully chat box won't update again and go a bit mad to black, and we'll be able to see everybody's comments from now on. And I might just do a little bit of subtle colouring I'm going to go to this nice warm, almost custardy colour. It's called ivory, but it's not very ivory. And I'm just going to do a little bit just where I think it just needs a little bit of a top up around this edge here. And I really should stop fiddling. But it's just good to just get a little bit more colour, just stop in these top sections without going to the watercolour. Or if there's anywhere that you just missed. Because again, if you go back to your watercolour now, you can sometimes find that you get like a banding. So sometimes coloured pencils just help you just touch up places without too much kind of issue. And I'm just going to do a little bit along these border of the petal as well. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I am back on PGG's group and page on Friday. And I'm going to be doing a special project on there. So if you have some of the wing stamps, but I'm also going to use some of the new stamps that Lynette is going to be launching. Makes it sound like they're going to be fired out of a cannon. Whee! There we go. And I think with that, I'm going to call it a day. Take care. And I will either see you Friday if you want to, or we will be back on Tuesday. Take care and bye for now. Yeah, I can't always see written replies either, so I will say ta-ra. And if I spot anything online, so usually I'll click back on a video just to check to see if there's any comments I missed, but it doesn't always show. Take care, and I will try and pop up a finished card using this piece as well, so you can see how it all pulls together. Bye!